Hey everyone, this is Bulbatrain, and this video is coming to you courtesy of our sedentary civilization. Not sedentary like lazy, just that we don't move. We're not hunter-gatherers, we don't have to move with our food sources. Some people do, and that's fine, and some people, like anarcho-primitivists, even want to return to a similar state, but the majority of the world lives in a society that can be called stationary. And that only really happens because of agriculture, unless you're Natufian. If you live in certain parts of the world, you may not even really think about it. You may not have ever even seen a farm, but you reap the seeds of agriculture every day. No pun intended. The Pokémon world is far less populated, but no less permanently settled, which means they probably have a food surplus, which means they probably have agriculture, and while there are historical exceptions to that generalization, again, the Natufians, there's also farmers in the Pokémon world. Farmers mean farms, farms mean agriculture. Since I've reached that conclusion, this week's Applied Pokology episode is about the 10 Pokemon I think would be the most helpful for agriculture or farming, which for the sake of this video are one and the same thing. I also want to do another video on 10 Pokemon for nomadic cultures in the future. If you don't want to miss out on that or any of the other videos that I put out, I would be greatly appreciative if you would consider subscribing to my channel and maybe hit the bell. That way you don't miss out on any future content. I also have a Twitter account you should follow if you want updates on the channel. For this video, I'm again covering the historical and modern uses of these Pokemon, but I put more emphasis on the historical usage. Obviously, as technology and society changes, some aspects of farming become more or less important, but as a historian, I still like to cover those older eras. A lot of the Pokemon will be mentioned in the way that they could have first been used to help produce an agricultural capable society, with those same uses sometimes being relevant into the modern age. So, with that out of the way, let's dive into my top 10 Pokemon for agriculture. Number 10, Eldegoss. Getting into this list, I wanted to start off with a Pokemon on an actual farmer's team. Milo's teams aren't all what I'd call useful for farmers, except for his Eldegoss. Eldegoss is a new addition to the Pokemon roster, but has a Pokédex entry that was just made for this list. It spreads the cotton fluff on its head around, and that carries nutrients for Pokemon and plants. Assuming that the amount of Pokemon food you have to buy it isn't wallet-breaking, Eldegoss becomes an excellent way to provide nutrients for the domesticated plants and Pokemon on the farm. Theoretically, early on, the people of the Galar region would have been able to use this Pokemon to cultivate plant species that may have otherwise been impossible in their region, and based on the nutritional benefit, I'm guessing Eldegoss is still massively important to the Galarians. Eldegoss's cotton can also be spun into a luxurious fabric, which may not seem to have anything to do with agriculture at first glance, but if the cost of feeding Eldegoss is already low enough that the nutritious fluff it releases is seen as a good investment, that would only double if it can also provide fabric. It's helping to fertilize your farm and have some lovely fabric to sell on top of it. All in all, I'd say this Pokemon would have made the farmers relatively powerful in Galar, and since Milo is the first farmer, not gardener, who's been a gym leader, I'd say the evidence backs that up. Number 9, Aggron. I may have been jumping the gun a little bit with Eldegoss. The nutrients are nice, but what are we giving nutrients to? The plants and other Pokemon. And agriculture isn't about finding random plants, it's about domesticating your own, and that's where Aggron comes in. A lot of Aggron's Pokédex entries are about how it's violent and thrashing and rawr, like all good tank-like Pokemon, but there's also this one in Sapphire. Aggron is surprisingly protective of its environment. If its mountain is ravaged by a landslide or a fire, this Pokemon will haul topsoil to the area, plant trees, and beautifully restore its own territory. Which, all I can picture is this giant Aggron building a Zen garden on its mountain, and the only reason it's so violent with trespassers is because it doesn't want anyone to know that it likes to sip tea and write poetry about the stars in its beautifully maintained garden. But it also makes Aggron a great candidate for land repurposing. So, agriculture is a little like the written language in that we cannot have the society we do without it, but also that it was somewhat rare. Roughly a dozen places around the world are thought to have independently discovered agriculture, which is mind-blowing to me. It would be less so in the Pokémon world though, because of Aggron. Not always, but usually, agricultural development depends on the region, rainfall, flood patterns, soil, and the stability of the river if you're a river civilization. But Aggron makes a lot of this controllable. It's already rearranging its mountain home, why couldn't it also be used to shape the land to make it more hospitable? Egypt was long and thin because it had to stay close to the fertile shores of the Nile, but what if an early pharaoh had used a team of Aggron to dig canals and widen the arable land? Or Yu the Great when he was doing something similar to China's Yellow River? Even into the modern day, I can picture Aggron helping to reduce flood damage and maybe even help to reverse desertification by having a group of them do the heavy lifting and rearranging. Number 8. Quagsire. To be fair, any Pokemon that learns Rain Dance could have been here, but Quagsire is a bit underappreciated in my opinion. I mean, it's cute, I guess, but it's just not a favorite. Come on, let's be honest. But it now has the chance to shine. Quagsire, our fields are dry and the rains are not falling this season. Use Rain Dance, call down a torrent of rain and make our fields fruitful again. And Quagsire did, and that's how the farm was saved. But I'm also thinking that this could be used to diversify crops and extend the areas of tillable land. In the real world, as I mentioned, agriculture can be a game of chance, especially early on in finding a place that receives adequate rainfall. But if you can make it rain on a whim, and assuming that Rain Dance doesn't have any long-term negative effects, you would be able to make it rain in a desert that normally has low crop yields, or reinvigorate canals and rivers that have been left dry. I don't know if it would work for a long-term solution, but in the anime, there's a group of people who worship Slowpoke for this very reason. Number 7. Mightyena. Okay, so you're part of a generation of nomadic hunters that domesticated Aggron to set you up with a nice plot of land, and your Quagsire to make it rain if those mountains over there block the storms, but how are you going to protect your plot of land? It's still isolated and spooky, your tools are stone, and there's not an established city nearby for protection, and hey, what's that little canine doing? Huh. It's picking at the bones left over from our meals. That's good. Other scavengers were doing the same, but were far more violent. This pack seems to be okay with our presence, and hey, they growl when someone or something else approaches this new settlement. What if we domesticated it? Let it stay in the settlement to keep an eye on things while we're sleeping. I don't imagine that Pokemon were domesticated quite the same way as our own animals, but if they were, that little story would be how I imagine Mightyena came to be part of human society. After all, it's how dogs became a part of ours, even before the invention of agriculture. As protectors and companion animals, nothing really beats the dog. Really, it was the first animal domesticated by humans and has been a deep part of our lives longer than we've even had the written word to praise them. In an older Pokemon society, I'm picturing Mightyena as the Pokemon of choice. A lot of the other dog-based Pokemon are more developed, like the way that our modern breeds are, which wouldn't have been the focus so early on. Mightyena has that feral look to it, rough and vicious, but has the temperament to obey a skilled trainer and work cooperatively with others, which is exactly what we want when we're finding a protector for our lovely new valley. And I can't imagine that a "Beware of Mightyena" sign would go unused on a modern farm either. Number 6. Mudsdale. I love Clydesdales, and Irish Cobs, and Ardennes, any horse with feathering to be honest. Don't ask me why such an innocuous part of a horse seems to add so much majesty, but it does. That's only part of the reason that I chose Mudsdale though. For me, mud feathering is a neat idea, but this Pokemon was made to work in the dirt. We have our land, it's ready for tilling, but I am far too tired to be dragging a plow through it on my own. If I have to do it myself, I'm only going to make enough food for me and my family, maybe my new Mightyena. What's this? A beast of burden that eats mud? My Arceus, what a revolution! Some might even call it a Neolithic Revolution. That's an anthropology joke and a bad one, I apologize. Also, horses weren't domesticated until after the Neolithic Revolution, but the point remains. There is no other Pokemon better suited to farm work than this one. Attach a hitch and plow and boom, instant and exponential growth on the number of crops you can sow during the season. Agriculture is all about building up a surplus of food, and this Pokemon has the Pokédex stats to suggest it would be perfect for plowing up fields, delivering said food surpluses, and providing a special type of mud that can be used for building the silos that will store the food. Seriously, ask the people of the Nile Delta or the early settlers of the Tigris and Euphrates, and I'm sure they'd agree that this one has it all. Also, I don't know for sure if Mudsdale can subsist on mud like its pre-evolution, but if so, that only makes it better, because I can guarantee you that mud is the one thing absolutely present on most farms. Number 5, Bouffalant. Bouffalant has style. It really can't be matched by Tauros or Miltank, and so it's the bovinish Pokemon I've tasked with the more delicate work that I don't trust Aggron to handle, like rice paddies. Few feats of humans engineering the natural world are as impressive to me as rice terraces, like the Longshan terraces in China, which have been continuously cultivated for half a millennium. They're stunningly beautiful and require more precision and care than just stomping down some earth to make a flat field. There's dangers in the mountains, and the flood system has to be worked precisely. Like Tauros, Bouffalant is said to have a nasty temper, but I'm sure we can work around that. Early on, in areas extremely mountainous, this Pokemon would have been indispensable in setting up the paddies for rice and would probably still be used today. Or else to help build that donut shop, whatever. Rice is an important staple crop, as is taro, which can also be grown in similar configurations, and I think that in the Pokemon world at least, Bouffalant would have taken the role that oxen do in ours, so that settlements could develop in an area that isn't as kind to farmers as some other regions. Also, it's squeamish, but Pokemon probably leave droppings, and like most animals that have use on farms, those droppings can be used to make fertilizer. So that's a thing that Bouffalant would help with. Number 4, Ladian. Okay, we have our fields, we have our protection, we have sown our crops, we have fertilizer, but we need some pollination. There are several Pokemon who take up pollination as a job, but there's one episode of the anime where they use a Ladian, and since Ladian is another one of those Pokemon with a cool design that gets forgotten, I'm putting it in here. We need to pollinate, Ladian can do it, its Pokédex entry even states it's already scattering a powder around at night. Why can't that powder be pollen? This one's kind of a short entry, but we all know the importance of pollination, and I just really like Ladian for that role. Number 3, Persian. You didn't think that I would lavish praises on the dog Pokemon and forget about the cats, did you? Well, cats were domesticated in a similar fashion as dogs, though much later on, but they also kind of did it on their own, which is fitting. I see Persian fully taking on the role of the early cat ancestors and sneaking into human settlements to feast on the nameless rodents that were infiltrating the early settlers' grain. See, when you have a food surplus, spoilage is a problem, but not as big of a problem as pests. Pests will not only damage the crop, but can also bring disease. Usually not directly, but generally speaking, if you're an early settler society, you do not want rats to be tearing through grain silos. It's just gross. These days, it's still a very obvious concern, and even though mice and rats can be seen as pets too, and such good ones, look, it's so cute, the wild varieties still need to be stopped from breaching our food stores. Enter Persian. First, its pre-evolution is actually going to come up in a later video about early development in the Pokémon world, so remember to subscribe. But Persian itself is perfectly suited to settled life by being the companion to humans and protecting the settlement from the ravages of plague by hunting the pests that bring it. Agriculture would have been hard-pressed to get over the hurdle of keeping food surpluses safe without a Persian there to guard it. Number 2, barbarical. Aquaculture. It's an awesome thing that people seem to forget about sometimes. Now, I realize I'm cheating a bit because fossil Pokemon either existed long ago or can only be revived with very modern technology in the Pokemon world, but and therefore I think it's okay. Aquaculture is the farming of, surprise, aquatic life. And we're not talking about your grandparents' corn farm here. We're talking eels and fish and algae and those salted seaweed snacks that everyone loves now, even though when I used to eat seaweed on my rice, everyone looked at me weird and called me names, but whatever. It is no surprise that the majority of water-type Pokemon are not equipped to help with aquaculture, though. They have fins and flippers, and I'm not gonna lie, Barbarical mostly got the job because it has the closest thing resembling hands, but its usefulness will still be invaluable. Especially before the invention of steel, early humans would have needed Barbarical to help build underwater structures used in aquaculture. And before you ask, hey Bulbatrainer, did early peoples really have developed aquaculture without our modern technology? The answer is absolutely yes. The Booj Bin site in Victoria, Australia was used by some Aboriginal tribes to farm for eels 2,000 years before the pyramids were built in Egypt. It's hard to fully appreciate how long a length of time that is, but the pyramids were older to Cleopatra than she is to us, and these eel farms are roughly as ancient to the pyramids as Cleopatra was to them. It's a long time, and I really think having a Pokemon like Barbarical there would have helped make aquaculture more prolific for the early Pokemon world and led to the rise of coastal powers, something it could still help out with today. Number 1, Conkeldurr. It's an odd choice, the one I've decided to end this list on, but hear me out, and also ignore that unintentional Hobbit reference. See, the entire reason I wrote this video was in celebration of agriculture and what it's brought us. As I said, there are other forms of civilization and human society that are fantastic, but agriculture is probably the biggest factor in the way our society works. Agriculture is the foundation upon which our society is built on, so it only seems fair that building the first permanent settlements should be something to consider when considering agriculture in the Pokemon world. Conkeldurr is the Pokemon that I'd want here, helping to build the first villages and towns and eventually the first city. Imagine an ancient clay tablet found near the base of Mount Coronet, written in a language as old to the humans of the Pokemon world as cuneiform is to us. In it, a letter from a magistrate to a trading village promising to send over some of the kingdom's Conkeldurr to help rebuild after an invasion. There are other Pokemon that can be used in construction, notably the Machamp line, which has actually been seen used for that purpose, but it's my list. All of the above entries are the core importance, but this one was chosen because it caps everything off. I can see Conkeldurr building the first silos and homes for a people who had spent hundreds, if not thousands of years being subsistent farmers or hunter-gatherers, finally ready to develop their first society, the first laws, the first markets, and all of it because of agriculture. I really hoped you liked this. Applied Pokology is meant to be a way for me to make list videos while still being unique. I know a list about farming and agriculture probably had you thinking either boring or cacturn to scare away crows, but I really wanted to go a few levels beyond that, to peel back the layers of history and find where Pokemon could have had a more integral place in the development of civilization. If you did like this video, be sure to let me know with a thumbs up. If my style of video or humor carried you to this point, I'd also appreciate a subscription so the channel can grow and I can keep on making videos like this. Next week, I'll have another theory video, and thank you for watching. I will see you all next time, and stay safe.